Hey everyone, welcome back to Make It Happen Mondays, where we talk about sales, business, entrepreneurship, personal growth, mental health, and everything in between with guests who I truly respect and I think make a positive impact on the world around us. Now, today's episode is a rerun of one of my favorite episodes of 2024, my conversation with the Guy Kawasaki. Now, we're releasing at the end of the year, knowing that a lot of you won't be listening due to the holiday and wanting to take a break for a bit. But for those of you who are listening, the reason I wanted to re-release this one is because I believe it's at the core of the challenge we're faced right now with AI and where human connection will be relevant moving forward. If you haven't heard this episode before or know the context, I was able to get Guy Kawasaki on the podcast, which was huge for me. He's probably the most well-known person I've ever had the pleasure of interviewing. As I was preparing for the interview, I saw an interview he had done at Google a few days before where he said that he had created this Kawasaki GPT, where he had uploaded all of his content, including every blog, book, podcast, and interview he's ever done. And he said in the interview, if you ask Kawasaki GPT a question, you'll get a better answer than if you ask him directly. So I decided to take him up on that challenge and asked his GPT all the same questions I was going to ask him the next day on the podcast. In the interview you're about to listen to, I didn't tell him I had done that until the end. When I told him what I had done at the end and that he was right, his answers last night were actually better than the ones he gave during the interview, he laughed and asked why we needed to do the interview in the first place. And that was my question back to him and to us as sales professionals, but more importantly as humans. If I can get better answers from his GPT than I can get from him, then what the fuck is the point of this conversation? Look, we're at a point where clients can get better insights and information about products and solutions from a GPT than they can from a sales rep in most cases. My personal GPT is a better tutor and teacher for my daughter than her math teacher is. AI is impacting every aspect of what we do as humans, and 2025 will be the year where it starts to take over the majority of what we can do in real and meaningful ways. The question we all need to ask ourselves is, what can we do that a computer can't? And that question is getting harder and harder to answer, my friends. If you want to join me on my journey of figuring this out, feel free to go to jbarrows.com and sign up to my individual membership to get access to everything I have and will be doing moving forward. I'll be relaunching a whole new platform in 2025 to try to help those people who care enough and are willing to put in the work. Use discount code JB25 for a 25% discount off the membership. Let's make it happen.
Yo. Hey, what's up, Guy? How you doing?
I think we are ready to rock and roll.
Ready to rock and roll. So how's your day going?
I literally just got out of the water. So
I was going to ask if did you get your surfing this morning?
So if I appear or sound particularly enthusiastic, it's because it's the endorphins still.
I love it.
Still pumping through my blood.
How close are you to the Hang 10? You said last time I heard you at Scott McGregor's, you were 4 feet away. So it was like 1 foot every 5 years. How close are you at this point?
I'd say I got another 4 years to go. I have never progressed so slowly trying to do something in my life.
No? Is this the biggest challenge thing that you've tried to figure out?
Yeah, I mean, this is harder than dealing with Steve Jobs.
That's a tall task.
That's saying a lot. Trust me.
What's I got so many questions for you that we'll dive into the book. But with your love of surfing, what would you say your biggest lesson that surfing has taught you about life?
God, I can explain all of life in surfing at this point. So, yeah. So first of all, the fact that I would take up surfing at 60 it's evidence of a growth mindset, because let's just say most people don't take up surfing at 60. I mean, I swear all of my peers their most active thing is changing the channel to Fox, and maybe they play golf once a year at the alumni tournament, right? But I'm surfing almost every day. So that's one life, but not one life, one lesson. But I'll give you some more. So 90% of surfing is sort of looking out to the ocean, looking out for the right wave. And that's kind of true of life. Like, is this the right job? Is this the right spouse? Is this the right startup? Is this the right product? Is this the right project? So 90% of that is looking for it. Now, if you never turn and paddle, if you never ask a person out, if you never ask for a job, if you never ask for a raise, if you never start a book, if you never start a company, if you never start a project, again, guess what? You will never accomplish anything. So you can't sit there all day. At some point, you got to turn. And then when you turn, you got to paddle furiously. And, sometimes you make it, sometimes you don't. And sometimes you have made the wrong decision in surfing. You picked the wrong wave. You turned in the wrong direction. You turned at the wrong time. There's so many things that can go wrong. But then it's a matter of, do you just sort of give up in disgust, or do you try to make your decision right as opposed to making the right decision? And those are the major lessons of surfing.
I love it. So, and look, these are all things I wanted to unpack. I got so many questions, and just to let you know, so I've always known about you, but I didn't know a lot about you until Scott McGregor had you on that talk, and then I read Think Remarkable, and then started diving into everything else. And the more I learn about you, the more I appreciate everything that you're doing, because this book about growth, grit, and grace, those characteristics that make up remarkable people, I wanted to back into those and pick apart each one and just ask you some very specific questions that I'm super curious about.
All right, fire away.
And wanted to start with grace in two ways. One is to say thank you, obviously, for coming on this. Like, this is your Jane Goodall out of body experience moment. This is equivalent to that. So thank you for that. I really do appreciate it.
You want to raise your standards. Okay.
No, not at all. But the other one I wanted to thank you, and this was really what caught me when you were talking with Scott, was how the fact that you're an expert in assholes. And I say this because I've had this narrative in my head for a while that has really, really frustrated me about how it seems like you have to be a raging asshole to get to the pinnacle of success, right? Because that's what everybody gets glorified, the movies and the news and everything else. But you really reframed my thought process around this, which I genuinely appreciate, because I kind of looked at it as almost a binary thing, right? And Steve Jobs, I actually use as an example. I'm like, he did incredible things, but from everything I've read about him or saw, like, he's just seemed like a raging asshole. But you broke it down into 4 different types of assholes, right? There's the political suck-up, the controlling micromanager, the egocentric, and the mission-driven. Can we focus the difference on the egocentric asshole and the mission-driven asshole? And could you unpack that a little bit, please?
An ego-driven asshole is all about self-glorification. It's me, myself, and I. It's me and my entourage. It's me and my personal assistant who has a personal assistant. It's me and my driver. It's me and my 25 people. And this is the glorification of this company is all about for me, right? Whereas I can honestly tell you, I don't think Steve Jobs was like that. Now, Steve Jobs was an asshole, but not that kind of asshole. He was an asshole who was driven by the mission of making the best computer possible and making people creative and productive. And if you got in the way of that vision, then he would run you over. There's no question he would run you over. In fact, that was a great motivation for me, that I wanted to avoid being run over. So that actually motivated me to do some of the best work of my life. Now, I think that, we could have a long discussion about which comes first. Like, you're an asshole, so that enables you to accomplish, miraculous things, or you accomplish miraculous things, so all of a sudden people tolerate your assholeness. I can tell you one thing: do not interpret this as saying that that being an asshole is necessary or sufficient to succeed. It's not at all true. And if you need an example, counterexample to Steve Jobs, it's Melanie Perkins, who's the CEO of Canva. She is the opposite, right? But she's still very successful. So you don't need to be an asshole. Maybe in some cases it helps, or maybe you are successful so people put up with your bullshit. And so when people start putting up with your bullshit, there's no feedback mechanism. Well, or the feedback mechanism is flawed, right? So like, oh, I'm so brilliant. I'm so successful. People put up my bullshit. I just keep giving them bullshit because, it doesn't matter because I am God, right?
How about this with staying on that with you, Apple, A players. Yeah. You always hired A players. You had this philosophy of hire. And my curiosity on that is, does the world need B and C players, right? Because the whole idea of like, if you have a bunch of A players, they might rip each other apart. But is there room for people to just do the job? Well, people who aren't those, turn and burn type of people.
Several thoughts here. First of all, A players do not rip each other apart, right? I mean, if you're truly an A player, you're trying to make it work and not trying to rip each other apart. So that's number one. Number two is that as I've gotten older and older, I've become more accepting that, I think there's a tendency to judge people in their careers. So you might say that, let's say you work at a company and you see some people, they don't come in as early, they don't stay as late, they don't fly on weekends, and you think, oh, they lack dedication, they lack whatever, right? But I've come to believe that, who are you to judge what's important to them? Maybe they're a single mom, right? Maybe they're a single mom dealing with 2 kids and her parents. I mean, you just don't know how, you cannot judge somebody else unless you're in their shoes. So that's number one. I also believe that, so you could say, oh, that person is a B player. Well, not to her kids, right? And arguably that's more important. Yeah. So that's how I look at things. And now I have come to believe that everybody you meet can do something better than you, right? So like, you may think you're just a cat's meow, right? But that person serving you cappuccinos, maybe he's like 10 times the surfer you are, right? And now maybe the world doesn't value his surfing ability as much as your ability to write books or lead a company or, whatever. But that doesn't mean that you are somehow morally superior or a more valuable human being. It's just, how do you count, right? So it's very unfair to judge a person at that instant in time as a B player or a C player, because when you consider the growth mindset, today's B player could be tomorrow's A player or A plus player. So if you make this instant sort of permanent judgment, you're a B player, you can never be more than that. That is wrong, because a B player can become an A player. So I need to revise that theory that, A players hire A players or people who can become A players, and they have the growth mindset to help B players become A players.
Yeah, I love that. And I think the grit factor is what you, and that's what I'm very curious about. First of all, why did you dedicate this book to Gen Z?
I dedicated this book to Gen Z because I think that they're in this stage of life where they're looking for direction. And, like all of them, they're reading the 4 agreements and they're trying to figure out what to do. And I hope with some hindsight, and it's not just my hindsight, because I have hindsight of 250 remarkable people. I mean, I could make the argument I may have more hindsight available to me than anybody in the world, right? So I that's why I kind of wrote the book. I feel I have this moral obligation. You have all this information and inspiration that nobody's going to listen to 250 hours and read 5,000 pages of transcripts. So Guy, for some reason you've been blessed with all these resources, and it's time to get it out. So that's kind of my perspective there. That I have this amazing resource, and I don't want it to go to waste. And I think in particular, Gen Z and millennials need this.
Yeah. Do you think that we're lacking grit like, do you think it's going away, or do you think it's just in a different place?
Well, I mean, like we started this conversation, like, what do you believe when you read the press? And right now, when you read the press, all you hear about is, Gen Z, they don't want to come back in the office. And, they're working in Bali 2 hours a day, and they think that's a full-time job at Google and, stuff like that. But I guess over the course of my life, another thing I've come to the conclusion is that nostalgia is overrated. And like every generation says, when I was young, I used to study hard. I didn't do anything bad. I worked hard. I contributed to the bottom line of the family. I never cheated. I never stole. I never did drugs. I was, such a clean kid. I did everything. And now this generation is just lazy. All they care about is partying and working remote and all that. I mean, let's be honest, right? We screwed around as much as anybody else.
Oh, absolutely. There was no internet, thank God, so none of it was recorded, for crying out loud.
Yes, there is that. So, it's amazing how retroactively, all of us were perfect when we were young. None of you kids are perfect. That's total bullshit.
You talk about this being a pivotal moment in society in general, but what we're starting to see, at least from my perspective, I did this post a while ago, say, hey, stop doing what you're supposed to do, right? You're supposed to go to college. You're supposed to get a job. You're supposed to get a partner. You're supposed to have a kid. And there was a post that a millennial said that, yeah, that's all well and good, John, but you as a Gen Xer and everybody above you, you had these societal norms that actually were comfortable because like you kind of knew what your next step was. But now that those societal norms are breaking in front of us, religion, all these different things, now we can do whatever we want, but I don't know what to do. So we're in this balance of you can do almost anything you want to do coming out of school, not even going to school at this point. You don't need a degree to make, a living. So how do we is this a good thing? Is it a bad thing? How do we make sure that we harness the talents while giving some direction so that it doesn't all unravel?
Well, I hope that people, that the guiding light is that they want to make a difference and that they want to leave the world better than they found it.
Yeah.
And I think if you had that guiding light, that would pretty much, put you on the right path. I mean, there are people who are leaving this world worse than they found it, right? And they have no compunction about that.
No. Well, and this leads to pursue your interests versus your passions.
Yes.
You talk a little bit about, because I love that. Because I used to, when people say follow your passion, I'm like, if I followed my passion, I'd be a stoner artist, like living on the beach, and I'd be broke. But you talk about focusing your interests.
Yes.
And developing your passions. Could you unpack that a little bit?
I think that we're doing people a disservice when we say you need to find your passion, because it implies that it's like a miraculous thing and you find it and instantly you fall in love and, you dedicate the rest of your life to it. And I don't think that happens very often, if ever. I think that as you go through life, especially Gen Z, man, you got like 90 years to do stuff. So you should pursue a lot of things that interest you and discard the ones that you don't like as you go. But don't set yourself up that, oh my God, I'm 25. I don't have my passion yet. Because listen, I've had 3 or 4 passions in my life. My last passion is podcast, and I came to that at 64. So, I think that, rather than to use a dating analogy, if somebody says to you, you're 25 years old, how come you haven't met the man, woman, how come you haven't met the person of your life yet? You're 25. Oh my God. So get out there and find that person. Well, I would make the case that, when you set out on a path like that, that's not organic. You cannot force that, right? So, and you may meet the person of your life in Coach on United Airlines, as opposed to Tinder, right? So So you gotta chillax and do a lot of sampling.
So you talk about the shit sandwich. I actually use the shit sandwich analogy quite a bit. Even before I read your book, I use this quite a bit. And so I think I'm curious on that as far as follow your interests versus the shit sandwich, right? Because I agree with you. Like I tell people all the time, like as long as you have a plan of where you want to go, at least directionally, do good shit, that type of thing, then I'll eat a shit sandwich if that shit sandwich is going to get me to that next level, to that next level, to that next level. But so many people taste a bite of the shit sandwich and they just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So how do you balance the follow, your interests with the shit sandwich that nobody wants to eat?
Well, I would say that when you find yourself eating shit sandwiches and loving it, you have found your interests.
There you go.
So,
Ikigai.
Like you're a podcaster, I'm a podcaster. Yeah, as a matter of fact, today, I don't know why, it's like now ruining my brain, but I figured out for each podcast episode, which lasts an hour, we put in roughly 20 hours of work. Now, you may find that astounding, and maybe I'm astoundingly inefficient, but I added it all up. The research, the transcription, the sound design, everything. It's about 20 hours. And a lot of that is just shit sandwiches. It's a lot of editing. It's a lot of, but to me, it's enjoyable stuff. And so I don't want to take credit for this because I got this thought from Mark Manson, the author of The Subtle Art of Not Giving a You Know What. And he said, Guy, you know what? When you find yourself doing a shit sandwich and you love the shit sandwich, you found what you love to do. And like as a writer, this book, I bet you we made 10,000 edits. I mean, it's unbelievable how many edits we made in this book. From the outside looking in, you would say, Guy, like, what the hell? You had to make 10,000 changes. In the back of this book, just human interest, in the back of this book, I list every coffee shop and restaurant that I edited the book in. And I swear there's about 60 or 70, right? Like, if in the year 2023, if you saw me in a coffee shop, I was editing this book. And you look at that and say, Guy, like, why are you killing yourself like this? Well, it's because this is what I love to do.
Well, and by the way, did you get the Olive Garden gift card I sent by you with the book in the package?
You know what? Okay. I swear to God, I carry it with me. This is the card you sent me. Yeah. I'm sorry I don't have your t-shirt on, but yeah.
That's all right.
And okay, I'll tell you a funny story. So, sometimes when you make speeches, they give you this commemorative crystal, right? And it's, spoken at the 76th annual, ABC Company Sales Awards, Guy Kawasaki, whatever, right? So sometimes when I get that, I take it to my wife, and my wife is just like shaking her head, like, what are we supposed to do with this? I said, I don't know, honey. And this, so I've told her sometimes, why don't people just give me an Olive Garden gift card? I mean, that's what I love. If you're out there and you work for Olive Garden, you should know, man, I am like your Olive Garden evangelist. And when I tell my friends I love Olive Garden, they all like shake their head and laugh at me. I'm like, I don't understand that. And then I take them to eat there and they love the food. And like, Olive Garden, the food is good. Unlimited breadsticks, salad, and soup. You never have to make reservations. And there's always parking near an Olive Garden. Like, what am I? Oh, they got good Wi-Fi too. So you add all those up. And then plus at the Olive Garden that I go to in Capitola, California, nobody knows who I am, which is a really big plus for me because nobody comes up to me in the middle of me eating my salad and my spaghetti with marinara and broccoli on top. Nobody comes up to me and says, I got this idea. Can I just spend a few minutes pitching you? It's never happened. And then Olive Garden.
I love it. So I mean, I had a feeling because I was like, when I heard that, I was like, fantastic. Because that comes to the perception reality. Like all of a sudden there's this narrative about something that takes off. And now it's like, well, why? Like I like Cheesecake Factory. And for some reason the Cheesecake Factory gets shit on all over the place.
You're my kind of guy. Yeah.
I love Cheesecake Factory. I don't know what's wrong with it. It's got great food. Everything I eat there is fantastic. And it's a good environment and everything else. So, it leads me to and you brought up the book, Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. When did I've heard you talk at one of the events where, you're 60 years old right now. You just don't have, they're 60, whatever. You don't have time for shit anymore. Yeah. But in your 25, when you were 25, you couldn't not give a shit. Like, you couldn't just be you. So when did you find your, not give a shit factor, if you will? When did that really kick into gear for you?
About last year. No, I mean, your not give a shit factor. I'd say 55, really? 55 or 60.
You push back on Bill, around 43 when you were at Apple, when that whole, the ad campaign thing different, and you were like, screw you, well, give me one of those copies. Like, that takes a level of not giving a shit, right? You joke about losing a lot of stock.
But honestly, not giving a shit has several components. One of which is you have to be somewhat financially secure, right? I mean, you still got to give a shit if you have 4 tuitions to pay.
Yeah.
But my kids are older now, so that's one thing. I think a big component of not giving a shit is that you realize that the grains of sand in your hourglass, there's more in the bottom than in the top. So you got to stop giving a shit about what everybody thinks. And you just got to do what you think is right. Because, I look at many of these influencers, obviously younger, they got, many more followers than me, but they refuse to engage politically. And they tell me, I don't want to touch politics. I'm going to lose followers. People, that's not why they, listen to me, et cetera, et cetera. But I think you have a moral obligation as an influencer to influence people because, God knows if democracy ends, how much lipstick do you think you're going to sell?
Yeah, true. And I think that, it's interesting because people do try to play all sides. And when you pick that lane and you have core values. So for you, when did you find, or have you ever gone through the why exercise, or have you, like the Simon Sinek why thing? Like, did you find your why, or it was a point where you were like, I get it. This is why I do what I do. And the do good shit came up.
Honestly, I'm not that cerebral. So I don't sit around asking myself, why do I do things? I mean, for the longest time, when people ask me what motivates you, Guy, I used to tell them, I got 4 tuitions to pay. And, there's more truth to that than maybe they want to hear. I mean, that is literally true. Now, I only have 1 more tuition left. So, I can tell you that my giving a shit goes down as the tuition goes down. There's high correlation there.
I get it.
So
what about values?
But really, it's just, I got only so much time left on this earth. I got only so much energy. I cannot be trying to be making everybody happy.
Yeah.
There's about 10 people in the world I care about making happy.
Yeah, I think that those are the ones that matter. Let's talk about growth move to the growth section, or back into the growth section. You talks about inspiration and motivation and how leadership needs to inspire, but do both. What's the difference in your mind between inspiration and motivation?
I would say that all inspiration is motivation, but not all motivation is inspiration. So I think, for example, Jane Goodall is inspiring, and that will motivate people to be like her. But let's take your random hedge fund manager who is motivated by making as much money as possible. That's motivation. That's not inspiration. So there are forms of motivation like greed or lust.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know, power. I would not call that inspiring.
actually, you brought up something interesting. You said, don't worry about where the motivation comes from.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other story.
Yeah. So how does that relate? Because some people are super motivated by very negative things. How do you make sure you don't get consumed by the negative motivation and you turn it into?
Yeah, I mean, I really didn't address that. I'm a very optimistic guy, so this book is written. What I say about motivation is, don't worry what motivates you. Just worry that you are motivated. And you bring up a good case, like what if you're motivated by something evil? And here's Guy telling you, well, don't worry that you're motivated by evil. Just worry that you're motivated, which is that is a gap in what I wrote, because I'm assuming that for me, motivation means motivation to do good things, right? To work hard, to study hard. And what I'm saying there is, don't worry about what motivates you to work hard and study hard. Just worry that you are motivated to work hard and study hard. And the stories I tell in my book is that I think many people retroactively, when they say what motivated you to study hard and work hard, you say, I wanted to democratize computing. I wanted to ensure the reduction of poverty. I wanted to end climate change. I wanted to, whatever. But I'm being completely honest. When I was growing up, I came from a lower middle class family, and I went to a school on the other side of town, so I had to catch the bus to school. And twice I got robbed on the bus, and then once a family friend gave me a ride in a Porsche 911.
Yeah, I heard this.
And I'm telling you right now that people may be motivated by changing the world. All I wanted to do was change the car. So when I rode in that 911 and when I got robbed on that bus, I said to myself, guys, someday you're going to live someplace where you're not going to get robbed on the bus and you're going to buy a 911. And so you better study hard and work hard. And I swear to God, that's what drove me. I'm being completely transparent. That's what drove me. Now, okay, call me shallow, call me insipid, call me plastic, but I'm telling you, that's what motivated me.
And I think that's, to your point, like that's the way everybody feels like they have to have this huge why. And I tell kids, like, I didn't, I read the Simon Sinek book, and, my dad passed away a few years ago, and that really forced me to reevaluate a few things. And so I kind of really did go through the why exercise and the values, and it was very helpful for me. But I'm a 48-year-old man. You know what? At 22 years old, it's kind of like telling them, find your passion or find your why. It's like, how the do you know what that is? Like, you just want to get up in the morning and make a few bucks and go to the bars and have some fun, right? That's a lot of ways.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, so like, who at 22 is not motivated like that, right? I mean, I think a lot of people who at 40 or 45, you ask them what their motivation was when they were 20. They're going to give you some bullshit answer, right? But all they really wanted to do was get up, go to bars, meet women, meet men.
It's like you only hear money doesn't matter from rich people, right? It's like, oh, money doesn't matter. It's like, well, when you were broke, it mattered.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a trust fund baby, money doesn't matter.
What about, so from a growth standpoint, people, coming up with products, design thinking, I think Apple almost defined what design thinking was, and you talk about backing into it. Can you help me rectify that or compare that to Henry Ford, who says, if I asked what the market was asking for, I would have made faster horses, or whatever he said there. Because you work like, what is the need, and back into that need, and I apply that to sales across the board. But then there's the innovators who are just like, I don't like, this is what we got to do. So how do we balance that?
Well, I mean, I think the important realization is that there are multiple paths to success. So yes, you can be driven by the customer, but you could also be the customer and build what you want for yourself. So Wozniak was not driven by talking to people who said we need a personal computer. Wozniak was driven by wanting to build a computer for himself. So one way is to build the product you want to use and hope you're not the only nutcase that wants it. That has worked very well in tech. Another is, go and see what pain the customer's in, and, work backwards from the customer. That can work. So those two things are not at all the same, but they can both lead to success. So I guess what I'm saying is that there are multiple ways. And this is one of the problems with reading any book, which is these books, including mine, they are not scientifically valid, right? We didn't take a random sample of successful companies and score them on, how they came to their product. Actually, that would be an interesting exercise. All we know about is like, okay, Simon Sinek said this, and Elon Musk said this, and Steve Jobs said this, and Guy said this, Bill Gates said this, and, so it's kind of like, whoever you want to believe or whatever book you read last, that's what's on the top of your mind. And guilty as charged. I mean, that any business book writer who is truly honest will admit that they're not really scientifically valid.
And even that the data that you see out there can be manipulated in about 15 different ways.
Oh,
so, I love your idea of like what's missing, right? For every data set that you look at, like what's missing from that data set. We see all these people who don't have degrees that are super rich. It's like, but let's find out like the 500 other CEOs of Fortune 500 companies that have a degree. So with education, you are a huge proponent of education, obviously, and shout out to your teacher, Tootie Akau, right? Because you wouldn't be here without her, right? When you talk about hiring, you talk about focusing on skills versus education. So could you, with where education is going right now, and some universities are still charging absurd amounts of money for piece of shit degrees, what should a kid do right now in college? Is it worth pursuing an education and getting a formal degree?
I think that going to college is one of the best things you could do to invest in your future. Don't get me wrong. So if you have the money and the means and the ability and the time, and, if you can do it, I strongly encourage everybody to go to college. I'm not one of these Peter Thiel kind of guys that says, don't go to college, just go straight from high school, build your dream. And I think going to college, it's 4 more years of exposure to the world, 4 more years of sampling that you would not get. It's years of meeting people you would have never met if you just got siloed in a job. If you can, go to all the foreign campuses, I didn't do any of this. So I think that's all true. Now, having said that sounds like, somebody who's really got a sense of entitlement. So what I'm saying is, yes, that I think is ideal. But if you don't have that situation, college is not the only way to get an education, is what I'm trying to say, right? And so the onus is on you to get educated.
Yes.
And so it could be, Google has free courses. It could be Khan Academy. It could be whatever. And I just hope on the other side of this equation that recruiters, they don't limit the pool of hiring to people only who have, quote unquote, the right degree and the right work experience. Because I'm telling you, there are a lot of people who may not have that degree and may not have that work experience, including me. My work experience was primarily in the jewelry manufacturing business, and I went to Apple. On paper, there's no way you should have hired me. So I'm telling you, they should look beyond that. And, the real question is, can this person do the job? Which is very different than, does this person have the right educational and work experience pedigree?
And do they have the grit? I mean, that's the one thing I learned.
Exactly.
Before I worked with Jack Welch, I asked him when I was 25 years old, a stupid question, effectively, because I had started my first company, and we were like, the first 20 of us were all in, and we were all super passionate, and like the 50th person we hired just didn't have it. And I asked a dumb question, Jack, how do you instill your passion on somebody else? And he was like, you can't, you idiot. But he didn't say that, but he was like, you have to hire it. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes a lot more sense. So the grit factor, what do you look for? Like, can you identify grit in an interview?
Wow, that is a good question. I certainly think there's evidence of grit in people's lives, right? And I'll give you an example. So I think if you are hiring people and you see someone who was on a wrestling team in high school or college, I think you can be pretty confident that that person has grit, because if you're on a wrestling team, there is no more one-on-one achievement, one-on-one. It's all on you. That's number one. And number two, you know that if you are the best wrestler in the world or in the NCAA, it's not like you're going to get a $20 million contract, right? So you know that this person is put up with all this stuff just because of the love of the sport or something like that. So I've had wrestlers who work for me, and I mean, that's a very rich vein. All you wrestlers listening out there, you say, oh, thank you, Guy. You're making it so much easier because you're telling me, I have grit, and you didn't get the full ride, and you didn't get the payments under the table, and you didn't get the free cars, and you didn't get the, the free meals and all that. You didn't get your special dorm and all that. So
yep.
Look for wrestlers.
I love it. Let's finish up on this because I know we're coming up on time. You are a massive proponent of AI, right? I mean, you've gone so far as to say that outside of women taking over the world because men have ruined it, that AI is the only thing that potentially might save us from ourselves as a society, right? And you use it a lot for your book. I did an interesting experiment last night. So I used Kawasaki GPT to have this conversation.
Okay.
So I interviewed you last night, and you had great, insightful answers for many of these questions. And I did ask
wait, today or last night?
Last night. So when I got on Kawasaki GPT, and because I was thinking through the questions I wanted to ask you, right? And I was like, well, I want to see if these are decent questions. And so when I heard you speak at Google and you talked about Kawasaki GPT, I was like, holy shit, like this is perfect. I can practice now my interview with Guy. So I'm gonna send this back to you if you're interested. I'm gonna compare your real answers with
oh my God.
Right? But
I can tell you what you're gonna find.
Well, I think I know what you're going to say, but go for it.
Kawasaki GPT is going to give you better answers than me. I really, truly believe that.
So with that, okay, I mean, I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you just because I love your vibe, I love your values and everything. But if any kid now moving forward can have if you put like an avatar to it, I don't know if you saw Reid Hoffman, what he just did recently and how he interviewed himself. And it was like, you could not tell the difference. Where does that leave us from how can we make sure we retain the human element here moving forward with how fast this is moving?
Well, I mean, in the case of Kawasaki GPT was force-fed by me with all my writing, my videos, my speaking, all the transcripts of all the interviews that I did. So the data set came from me. It's not like all made up shit, right? So Kawasaki GPT, it really, I think it's, in a sense, it's a way for me to be immortal, scary as that might be. And so, I tell you something, you may find this absolutely, jaw-dropping, drop the mic moment, but many times people ask me to write introductions or reviews or blurbs or guest essays, for, shall I say, very famous publications. And I confess to you that step one, whenever anything like that happens, is I go to Kawasaki GPT and I ask myself the question. I swear to God, I ask myself the question.
Yeah.
And now I don't just copy and paste, but it is the start of most of my blurbs and forewords and contributions, contributed articles. Because I swear to God, Kawasaki GPT understands me better than I understand myself. There's no question.
I was floored last night when I was just like, holy shit. This is absolutely
this. I could have surfed longer.
Right, yes. But I think that's ultimately what I'm personally struggling with. You know, I met with Gary Vaynerchuk a little while ago, and I asked him, this was back in 2017, and I had seen an AI email written better than I could have written. And what he said still sticks with me to this day. He said, don't worry about the tech. You're not going to beat it. He goes, just be the last mile. Make sure that, like, let it do all the heavy lifting, but right before you hit send, right before you do whatever, don't just cut paste. Make sure you humanize it, because as long as there's a human on the other end of that, there's that connection that needs to be made. And I'm wondering if kind of that's what your kind of philosophy is and how you're leveraging this and where you see it going.
Well, okay, don't get me wrong. I bet you if you took the amount of time, if I wrote it from scratch versus starting with Kawasaki GPT and editing, I bet you I don't save that much time.
Right. Yeah.
But it sure is a lot less mentally taxing to get a really good first draft from Kawasaki GPT. And I would assume that, you know, LLMs will soon be able to kind of fake personalization.
Yeah.
I mean, it can't be that hard to be like Guy. You know, if you look at Guy, you say, well, you know, you should ask, I wonder if you ask Kawasaki GPT, you know, write a response like Guy. Be sure you emphasize that you don't give a shit anymore and you're just telling it like it is. I bet you ChatGPT or Kawasaki GPT could do that today. But you know what's amazing to me? I just interviewed Leslie Valiant, and he's this like super duper AI guy. Like, you know, like he's the computer science, you know, large language model, you know, learning guru of the world. And, you know, he said, Guy, you just need to remember that when Kawasaki GPT or ChatGPT is making an answer, it's based on data, and it's just putting up syllable after syllable. It's not really, you know, thinking in the way that a human thinks, but I gotta tell you, man, I have asked ChatGPT questions that it just floors me with the answer. And you're telling me, yeah, that's just data, putting in syllable after syllable based on probability. Like, I refuse to believe that. I mean, it's just, to me, so sentient. And I challenge you, are you listening out there? So I want you to go to ChatGPT and I want you to ask it the question, should we teach the history of slavery in America to students? And you look at the answer ChatGPT gives you, and then you ask, well, what about white people who are going to feel like, you know, they're going to be ashamed or they're going to be traumatically affected by this? And ChatGPT is going to give you an answer about, well, you know, kind of like, yeah, that could happen, but the upside of teaching slavery so much exceeds the downside. And when you read that answer, you're going to think, I just had a conversation with somebody who's really wise. You're not going to think, syllable by syllable, it's just data. No way.
No, and that's what I find so fascinating about what's happening right now. Like you say that this is bigger than the internet, this is bigger than the PC, this is bigger than the iPhone, and I agree with you. I think this is this is a force multiplier where, you know, hockey stick learning on top of itself. So we don't know where this is going to go, but you got to be along for the ride, right? Turn and what is it? What do you do on a surfboard? You turn and burn. Turn and burn on it, right?
And make your decision right.
Yep, make your decision right. Well, Guy, this has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. And you know what? You got me thinking about Olive Garden. I think I'm going to go take my gift card. I swear to God, I'm going to go to gift card right now. I'm going to go eat at Olive Garden.
Thank you, my friend. And look, is there anything besides buying the book? Is there anything you want to tell the audience on the way out the door?
Well, actually, you know what? I'm going to send you a link to an online Canva course that is How to Be Remarkable. So it's free and online. It's for people who don't have the book, don't want to buy the book, don't want to read a book. This is an online course about how to be remarkable. So that, you know, I'm always trying to help.
I love it. I will put that in the show notes and make sure that everybody
Yes, thank you.
Thank you all very much. Hopefully you all enjoyed this as much as I did on this one. And like I say all the time at the end of all these podcasts, especially this one, go out there and make somebody smile today, because no matter how bad your day went or you think it's going, you make somebody smile today, you know you had a good day. And the world needs a lot more of that right now. So thank you all very much, and I will see you on the other side.
Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. With your support and our incredible guests, we're one of the top sales podcasts out there right now, and I can't thank you enough. Now, to keep the momentum going, it would mean the world to me if you could go and leave a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform and share some of your favorite episodes with your network. Also, I am super excited to be launching my new newsletter, where I'll be sharing everything I know and everything I'm learning along the way while I'm out there selling every day just like you. Go to jbarrows.com/newsletter to sign up today. Let's all level up and make this happen together.